Learn how to run a function immediately after it is created without calling it manually. Let us build a self-invoking function together and see how it runs automatically right after it is defined. No function name is needed and no external call is required. So let's dive in. So here is my boilerplate code, and let's move into the script tag and make the functions that we want to use for this example. So I'll just go ahead and make a function. Now, traditionally, when you want to make a function, you usually do something like this. Let's say you want the function to be multiplied, and then you do something like this and put some actions inside. And then later, when you finish this, you can come down and say something like multiply and pass in parameters like this, and then you output your code. But for IIFE, we are not going to be following that same pattern. So the way the self-invoking function works is that you start that function with a parenthesis like this. And inside that parenthesis is where you can now put the function keyword and then the curly braces. And inside it, let's say we can add a text like this and say, hello, I called myself. Now, if I come outside of this function, I then says document.getElement by ID. So I can show the value immediately and using our .html property to change it. Equals to text. Well, right now, nothing is happening on my screen then. I must have missed something. So what did I miss? Yes, I missed something actually. This lines should be inside and not outside. Now, once I have this, then I need to now call it outside it immediately after it with my opening and closing brackets. And now you can see, hello, I called myself. Now look at the difference between what we did here and the normal way we used to make functions. Now this example creates a function that immediately run and display a message on the page. Now, how did we got to this point? Well, we create an anonymous function. You can see that this function has no name. So anonymous function doesn't use name. So you can see that it has no name, but it has the function keyword. And then we wrapped it inside parentheses, which is the opening and closing parentheses. And then at the end of the parentheses, we now invoke the function automatically. And then we store the text inside the function, which is this text. And then we now display the text inside the HTML page. So how does JavaScript sees this function? So the way JavaScript sees this function is that JavaScript sees a function wrapped in a parenthesis, opening parenthesis and closing parenthesis. Then it treats it as a function expression. So immediately it detects this opening and closing braces, it immediately executes it, and then the function runs once and outputs the text. So there's no need to call it separately and come down and say something like maybe multiply or something like this, sum 5 and 6. No, nothing like that. We don't need anything. So this parenthesis is signaling to JavaScript that it should immediately invoke this function, which means it should immediately run it with the presence of this opening and curly braces at the end of the function. So now you might want to ask, what exactly does IIFE means? Well, it simply stands for immediately invoked function expression. And an example of it is what you can see that we just completed now. So this type of functions, they run instantly after definition, and they don't always require function name. As you can see that this function does not have any name, and it helps to avoid global pollution. So from what you can see on the screen now, here are some takeaways I want us to go with. Number one is that the function executes immediately. We do not have to call it anywhere in our code. And you will see that initially when I made a mistake of putting this outside, it didn't give us anything. But when I moved this inside it and added this opening and closing bracket, then it called the function by itself and immediately displayed a result on the HTML page. So no manual calling needed. It's useful for things like one-time setup code. And then it keeps variable inside local scope. You can see that the variable for this function is locally inside that function. So we were able to see how this functions runs immediately and display a message on the page, just as you can see on the right hand side. Hello, I called myself. So self-invoking functions are a way to run code instantly while keeping it private and isolated from the rest of the program. So before modern JavaScript modules, so IIFEs were heavily used, but they are no longer as dependent on as before. Now that we have modules in JavaScript, which does a better way of working with functions in JavaScript.